Hi, this is Ryan Neal from the USA offices of Neal's Saddlery and Harness, Cowboy Sewing Machines, and High-Tech Sewing Machines. And we're going to do another video here. We get a lot of customers that ask us questions on the Cowboy Outlaw, for instance. I think a lot of it has to do with operator unfamiliarity with how to use the machine. So what we're going to try to do in this video is try to alleviate some of the concerns and also maybe some of the issues that operators are having when they're using this sewing machine, and try to identify some of the problem areas that operators maybe are not paying attention to while operating the machine. The first major issue, it seems anyhow, that operators are having with this machine is that they're not pulling the handle all the way down and all the way up as the machine is sewing. And I think what that is causing, it's causing a short stroke situation inside the sewing machine, and so the machine actually binds up. So what I'm going to try to do is show you guys the correct way to operate the sewing machine, and then what to do in case you're in a short stroke situation where the machine should actually bind. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this material in. This is approximately 2 layers of 8 to 10 ounce tooling leather, relatively heavy, relatively tough. And so I'm going to install it. I'm going to put this into the machine, and then I'm going to show you when you first start out sewing. You want to make sure you hold your top and your bobbin threads off to the right for the first 2 stitches, and then after that you can let go. So if you watch, I'm going to hold on to this for 1 stitch. There's 1, and then there's 2. So that's the second stitch, and now I can totally let go of it and pull the handle up and allow the machine to pull the thread up. Now as I sew along, I'd like everybody to pay very close attention to my hand on this handle. And you'll see what I'm doing is I'm operating the handle and pulling it all the way down to the bottom of the stroke, and then pulling the handle all the way up to the top of the stroke. And you'll see that I'm not short stroking it. So I'm not allowing the handle to come halfway down or 7/8 of the way down or 3/4 of the way down. I'm bringing it all the way down to the bottom of the stroke, and I'm bringing it all the way up to the top of the stroke so that the handle does complete a full revolution each time. If you do not do that on the Cowboy Outlaw, unfortunately the machine will go short stroke, which means that sometimes you'll get a bind or a clog of thread down in the shuttle hook area. So watch very carefully as I do this. I'm bringing the handle all the way down, bringing the handle all the way up, bringing the handle all the way down, bringing the handle all the way up. And I'm doing it with a little bit of authority. You can see I'm not bringing the handle down very gingerly or very slowly. I'm doing it with a little bit of authority. So all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up. And if you remember that, that's going to solve about 99% of your issues that you have with the Cowboy Outlaw. As long as you remember to pull the handle down fully and lift it up fully. Now obviously you don't want to rip the handle off of the sewing machine, but you just want to pull it down with a little bit of authority. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch around the border of this piece. Again, keep your eye on my hand and watch. Make sure that you can tell that I'm not short stroking the machine, and I'm allowing the machine, the handle, to go all the way down and all the way up. Now, usually when you go to make a turn on the Cowboy Outlaw, what I recommend doing is lifting up on the presser foot and make sure the needle is out of the material. A lot of times on conventional sewing machines, they'll tell you to leave the needle in the material. It works a little bit easier on the Outlaw if you just leave it out. And then you can actually advance and bring the needle bar down slowly to plan your next stitch. Once you're sure where that is, just let go of the presser foot and allow the needle to go down through and start the next hole. Then up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down to the next position. Now we're ready to make another turn. Pull the needle out of the material, lift the handle, and then bring the handle down where you would like the next stitch to appear. Bring the needle down at where you would like the next stitch to appear, and then you can just continue sewing. So you can see I've sewed around the entire perimeter of this piece. Now I'm going to talk about how to extract the material from the machine. There's basically 2 ways to accomplish this. The first is you need to lift up on the handle and then pull the material towards you a little bit, drop the handle. Then what you can do is grab a hold of the thread where it comes out of the front of the thread take-up lever, which is right here. If you simply pull on that thread, then you can see you can make slack to pull the material and the thread out of the machine. So then you can again cut the threads, okay? The other option that you have is you can now and this would be one of the few times that you would actually short cycle the handle. If you just bring the handle down a little bit like this, pull on the material or pull on the threads, then lift up on the handle, you'll see that the thread take-up lever actually makes slack for you. So watch as I do this. And see, I can pull the material out of the machine that way also. So you have two options: either grab a hold of the thread right here or do a short stroke on the handle when the needle's all the way up in its highest position. And then that will allow you to advance the thread out of the machine. So that would be just some operational tips that we found that allow you to operate the machine with a little bit less frustration. We noticed that because this is a hand-powered sewing machine, a lot of people aren't familiar with the mechanics of the machine, and I think sometimes, you know, because they are novices and brand new to sewing, they tend to make a few more mistakes than somebody that had a familiarity with industrial sewing machine operation. So the second thing I'd like to talk about is what to do in case you do short stroke the handle or there is a clog that occurs in the shuttle hook area of the machine. Now, we have had some customers call in and say that their machine had jammed up. And 99.9% of the time, the reason why the machine is jammed is because you've got a piece of thread that's stuck somewhere in this shuttle hook area on the machine. And in order to correct for that problem, what you want to do is you'll notice that there's the first thing I would try to do is to see if you can clear the clog just by pulling the thread out. If that becomes difficult or impossible, or if the thread breaks off, the second thing I would do would be remove this screw and remove this screw as well. And then with these screws removed, you'll see that there's this retaining ring will pull out of the machine. Sometimes you may have to get a screwdriver and just sort of lightly pry the retaining ring out of the machine by doing it on the front side and the back side. But you'll see that this retaining ring will pull out of the machine, and then when that happens, the hook also will come out of the machine. Once that happens, you want to go ahead and blow this out with some compressed air. Grab any thread that's sticking in the shuttle race area of the machine. The shuttle race is the track that the hook runs in. You want to go ahead and make sure all that stuff is removed and cleared from the machine. Make sure that it's clean, and then you'll reinstall in the reverse order of disassembly. Then finally, what I recommend doing about every 5th or 6th bobbin change is putting one small drop of oil right down here in the track where the hook runs. And that will keep the hook well lubricated, also operating smoothly in that race. So if the machine should ever clog up, either by virtue of an accident with the needle, virtue of operator error, virtue of short stroking the handle, you always want to try to address the issue by removing the clog that is in the hook, either by pulling it out manually or removing these two screws and pulling the ring out. Now, the worst thing that you could possibly do with the Cowboy Outlaw is force this handle down when the machine will not turn in a downward direction, or when the handle will not turn in a downward direction. Because the problem that you have is this machine is tough. It's built very tough. However, it just like any piece of equipment, if you abuse it, it's possible to knock it out of adjustment or break it. These machines very rarely break parts. They are very reliable with regard to the durability of the parts. But the one problem that we seem to have sometimes with operators that abuse the machine is that by forcibly grabbing a hold of this handle and ripping it downwards when the machine is jammed, it sometimes will knock the machine out of time. Timing is a relatively easy thing to accomplish on the Cowboy Outlaw. If you do have questions on how to time the machine, we can certainly explain to you how to do that over the phone. But as a precautionary measure, 99.9% of all of your problems could be solved by not forcing this handle downward if the machine should clog. So I'm going to go ahead and do another operation on this, or do another sewing operation on the Cowboy Outlaw, and I'm again going to show you how easy it is to operate the machine once you understand how everything works on the machine, and once you get your mind in a certain pattern so that you can understand what you need to do in order to make the machine work properly. So again, we're just going to hold our top and bottom threads off to the right hand side for 2 stitches. Just like that, we can let go of those threads now, and now we can continue to sew around the piece. And you can see how reliable the machine performs when it is handled correctly, that it does not skip stitches, it does not leave smaller stitches or larger stitches. Every stitch is exactly perfect, and every stitch is pulled up in exactly the way it should be. Again, I'm going to come around the corner here. Just like that, we're going to leave the foot up. I'm going to move it to the next position, find out where I'd like my next stitch to be, drop the needle down, and continue sewing. Again, always putting the handle all the way down, all the way up, and lifting up and down on the handle with some authority. And again, I'm going to find my next hole position, sink the needle, and now we're going to sew right back up the piece. Okay, now when I'm ready to extract my material, you can again either pull the thread from the where it comes out of the front of the machine here, or you can short stroke the handle just a little bit and rock it back and forth and pull your material out. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim these threads, and then I want you guys to take a good close look at these stitches. And you can see that the stitches are spaced absolutely perfectly, and that each stitch is in its place. And then and they're also very tight. I mean, this piece is sandwiched together and stitched very tightly. Then I'd like you to take a look at the back side and see how nice those stitches look on the back side of this piece. See how they're all tucked up in there, and then there's no loops, there's no nubbies or knobs or anything hanging down there. So you can see how nice the machine performs, but again, with anything, it takes a certain amount of practice in order to be able to familiarize yourself with how the machine performs, and a little bit of knowledge on what to do in case the machine should screw up in some way, or the operator. So, you know, sometimes the operator can be a big source of the problem with the sewing machine. So having a skilled operator that understands how to use the machine really goes a long way in terms of making sure that the machine, you know, produces a reliable stitch. So again, this is Ryan Neal from the USA offices of Neal's Saddlery and Harness, Cowboy Sewing Machines, and High-Tech Sewing Machines. If you should have any additional questions about the Cowboy Outlaw or any machine that we sell, please feel free to give me a call directly at 330-692-1418, and I do thank you for your time today.